So I want to start this talk on microcopy with the story of kind of how I came to start using the term and writing a blog post about it. A few years ago, I was working for a company called User Interface Engineering in the Boston area in Massachusetts. And I was doing a whole bunch of things for them. I was doing consulting, web design, web development, and we were just starting to offer webinars for sale. So we would record webinars, and then you could come to the website and purchase access to them. And so as part of that, I built a e-commerce checkout system. And this is the primary screen from it, right? So it's pretty typical billing information screen. You can see we have card information up top and then billing address stuff down bottom. And it was the first time I'd ever built something like that. And we were accessing PayPal. We were at the time, and so every transaction that was sent went to PayPal, and then PayPal would send back a response. And so if the purchase went through successfully, the response would be okay. And if there was a problem, you would get an error code. And we quickly realized that it was very beneficial to send ourselves the error codes to figure out exactly what was going on. There were a lot of errors. Credit card number is wrong. The expiration date is wrong. The security code is wrong. You can see we even put copy, a little link to the right of that, how to find this on your card. Back then, it was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, it was relatively new, and people had no idea how to find it. They also, sometimes the country wasn't listed. Countries change relatively often, and so we had to put copy in there for that. But there were a whole host, there were hundreds of possible errors. And we kept getting errors over and over again. Some we couldn't do anything about. But one in particular we got, which was that the address people were putting in didn't match the card number. It didn't match the address that person had on the card. And this was relatively common. It affected like 5 to 10% of transactions. And so we were losing real money by having that error so much. And so we were tracking it over time. And then we thought, okay, well, why don't we try to put in some copy to see if we can fix that problem. So we just added this copy right here. Be sure to enter the billing address associated with your credit card. And overnight, we started making more money. The problem went away completely. Never get emailed about it again. And that was it, right? So didn't really think much of it at the time. And just kind of went on and kept building other stuff and doing more stuff like that. But since then, or I should say after that fact, I started noticing other places where little bits of copy like that had a pretty cool effect, right? So here's a very common pattern that you'll see on like a free trial or sign up. You'll get this little message, no credit card required, right? That's a really kind of small detail, but it matters a lot when you're actually thinking about signing up for this web-based service. So that's a really kind of important thing to know. Here's another site that Mark Bolton wrote a book called Designing for the Web. And on the left-hand side, he was using PayPal as well. He had this little bit of copy that says, transactions are handled through PayPal, but you don't need a PayPal account to purchase. I remember when that was a really huge deal to people because there was this huge backlash against PayPal. I think it's still actually ongoing. But people were extremely wary of having to create a PayPal account in order to check out. So this tiny bit of copy actually alleviates a lot of concerns that people have. You can just use your credit card. You don't have to create an account. Another example that several people, including my family members, mentioned to me is that when you get an email that someone has shared a Google Doc with you, and if you've never used Google Docs before, it's kind of confusing. Like someone shared a document with me, but it's not attached in the email. Like where is it? I don't know. And so, of course, Google Docs is web-based service, and so they have this little bit of copy down here at the bottom that says it's not an attachment. The document's stored online in Google Docs, so you just click the link. And I remember people telling me who I was sharing Google Docs with, like, yeah, I had no idea until I read that little bit of copy that was so helpful. And so all these kind of little places kind of added up in my head, and I started thinking, like, this isn't just regular copy, right? It's like this tiny little copy that tells you the thing you need to know at like the exact right time. And I call it microcopy. So I subsequently wrote a blog post about it on June 9th, 2009. And it was one of those blog articles that you write quickly. I just had a few examples just describing what I meant by it. I wrote it in like 15 or 20 minutes. And if you know any bloggers, it's kind of that phenomenon where like you write thousands of blog posts and then one just kind of takes off and you don't really know why and you couldn't have predicted it or anything like that. So this was one for me, and it got a lot of traffic and all that. And other people started saying to me like, yeah, thank you for giving a name to that thing. I've seen it so many times. So for better or worse, the term microcopy is my fault. So I want to talk to you more about microcopy and about the details of microcopy because I think it's extremely interesting. So to kind of define the term, what is microcopy? It's just a short sentence, phrase. Sometimes it's a single word. It's just like perfectly placed. It's often targeted at a very specific question or concern. So it helps people answer a question. It tells people, okay, you don't need an account. It's like you're anticipating the troubles they're going to have with an interface. It's always extremely contextual. So this actually makes it really hard to predict. So until you do like usability testing or until you watch people use your software or interface, you probably won't be able to predict what microcopy is needed. There are some that are getting pretty standard, like no credit card required, or you don't need an account to use PayPal. Those are becoming extremely common, so you can kind of anticipate those. But there's a lot more cases that you just can't anticipate. You don't know if they're coming. And finally, I think microcopy is your secret weapon. I do a lot of usability testing at Hubspot, and so many of the problems can just be removed by just adding the tiniest bit of copy. It's really amazing. So I kind of think of it as like a secret weapon. So that's kind of the main benefit, is that microcopy reduces friction. It does a lot of other things. It clarifies and nudges and reassures people. But the end result is that it removes friction from the interface. And I kind of think of it like this: person scratching their head, kind of sitting down at an interface. All interfaces introduce friction, right? Like to use them takes effort of some sort. So there is friction there. And I kind of think about, like, as you add bits of microcopy, you kind of give them a set of stairs to get over to get over that interface. So a bunch of different microcopy changes can make an unusable interface into a usable one, or like my opening example, can make a billing system where there's 20 to 30% error, where there is a 20 to 30% error rate, and we brought it down to under 5% total by just making those small copy changes. So my claim is this, that writing good microcopy is the fastest way to improve your interface. If you have 5 minutes to improve an interface, redesigning will take too long. Changing actual elements on the page will take too long. Changing the visual design will take too long. But sometimes just adding a word or two, is super easy and makes a huge difference. So where is microcopy? The simple answer is that it's everywhere. It's in almost any interface you can find. Here, it's in sign-up screens. So we see it down here on the site verb. You would create your site and you would put in a site name. But at the end, they say, don't stress, you can change this at any time. And I've seen that work really well, this you can change this at any time, or don't worry, you can change this later. That sort of copy is extremely valuable, especially when you're creating an account, because people often want to know that, especially if you're like setting up a URL or something like that. It's incredibly valuable to let people know whether or not they can change it. If you can't change it, it's really good to say that too. Like, this is permanent, you can't change this, so you better get it right. We also see microcopy in application settings. This is the WordPress admin screen. And you can see nestled underneath that first set of options is these settings may be overridden for individual articles. And I actually remember going in there one day and wondering to myself, these settings seem global, and I want to set a specific setting for a blog post or something like that. And then that microcopy answered the exact question that I had at the exact right moment. So I really appreciated that. On the Zappos 404 page, they have a lot of fun copy on this page. But what I really like is that they're fairly certain that Dash the dog ate the page. That's where the page went. So microcopy can be fun. It can be kind of humorous. You can add style and humor and kind of your own personality. And people really notice it too. In fact, someone sent me this page or sent me a link to this page saying, hey, you should check out this copy. It's really cool. So people really do notice those little things. You also see microcopy in email sign-up. This is a very common pattern. No spam, just prizes, pinky swear, right? So it's kind of fun. You also see the message often, like, we hate spam just as much as you do. There's a lot of variance on it, but you'll see it on most email signups these days. Yeah, that's where it is. On social signup policies and things, this is Plancast. With social sign-in, you see it a lot. Over here on the side, you can sign into Plancast with either Twitter or Facebook, and it says, we won't send anything back to your account without your explicit permission. Extremely valuable to know that, especially in light of all those services that automatically tweet for you or automatically throw stuff up on your wall, that sort of thing. Here's a mobile flow. This is in Instagram. You can send pictures that you take in Instagram to your Flickr account. And this was really timely copy that says, it will now launch Safari so you can log in and authorize Instagram. But the question that I had, which it answered, was, your photo will be here when you get back. So I can still post to Instagram and still continue on doing the task that I was doing. So that little reassurance was really nice. Here's an example of using Microcopy to solicit feedback. Please take this short survey. We promise to read every word. I'm not sure I believe them, but it was kind of nice to read that. It did build some trust in me, and I actually took the survey, and it made me take the survey seriously, which I almost never do. Success and error messages are often nice places to put Microcopy. Here's some examples. You can, be fun. Holy guacamole, best check yourself. You're not looking too good. It's kind of an easy place to be fun and kind of show your personality. At HubSpot, we try to think of our website or web application as a person, and kind of think like, what type of person is it? Well, it's friendly, it's intelligent, it's helpful, and so we try to write copy with that in mind, right? So we try to write copy as if the application is talking to you and is a friendly, helpful person. It's hard to do, but when you kind of write a whole bunch of tiny pieces of copy, over time they really do add up and kind of give your application personality. So it's really kind of fun. Here's an example, I think, of Microcopy in a physical space. This was, I believe, at an airport, and where this store used to be, they put this mark on the ground, this sign on the ground that says, "Our milk is moved." So they actually had moved the store, so they put a sign on the ground pointing to where the new store was. So it's really helpful for people who had been to the store before and didn't know that it moved. Welcome messages are a great place to put Microcopy. Here's several welcome messages from the email service Mailchimp. You log in and it says, "Wait, Josh, I've got something stuck in my teeth." And you have really no idea what that means until you click on it. Hi, Josh, I can has banana. So it's just saying something kind of funny and silly. People love this stuff who use the service. In fact, Mailchimp's pretty well known for it now. But you can also use it, like in the third one. You can use these little bits of copy to introduce services or introduce features that people might not be aware of. So for example, "Hey Josh, you into Twitter?" That's a really kind of interesting way for Mailchimp to now introduce people to their Twitter integration. So you click on that, you log into Twitter, and then now you can use Mailchimp along with your Twitter account. And that sort of thing. So this also brings to mind the idea of like training people where to find copy and messages in your interface. So every time you log into Mailchimp, there's some message there. And most people that I know who use Mailchimp look and read that message every single time. It's kind of part of their ritual of logging in and using the service. And so Mailchimp has realized this, and they start putting in, notifications and things like that. I was pretty excited to see that the folks at Mailchimp actually had Microcopy examples in their pattern library. That made my day when I saw that. And so they actually talk about all the messages, all the little bits of copy that they have throughout their site. And they give examples of all these. So it's really kind of cool. It also teaches other people working on Mailchimp like how to write copy, what style, and kind of how to think of the copy that they write for the application. So in general, the benefits of microcopy are pretty straightforward. It clears a path for the user. It tells, in some cases, it's directive, and it tells people like what to do. And in other cases, it gives options about what to do. So it clears a path for users. It makes users happy, and I'll give an example of that in a minute. But when done right, and this should be like any other part of your interface that's tested. You should, go into usability testing with an eye toward seeing how people respond to your copy and that sort of thing. But it can make people happy. It also makes people feel loved. Like that's what people say about the Mailchimp copy. Like, oh, they're funny. They like me. There are other examples where they just give you a compliment, like, hey, Josh, you're looking mighty nice today, that sort of stuff. And people love that, even though it's just software. But it's really cool. And I think in the end, if you kind of write copy like that, friendly copy, you can actually make users more loyal to you because people personify your software, right? They think of your software and thus your company as this kind of person. And so they can relate to you better. And so let me show you an example of a case study that we did at Hubspot that kind of really showed me the power of microcopy and kind of how people reacted to it. So here's a part of our dashboard. When you log into the Hubspot application, we show you how many visits you've had and how many leads you've generated from those visits. So this is an interesting screen. It's interesting data, and we have a graph that people can check every day. And what we found was that people really loved to kind of log in to look at the graph, but they kind of, in usability testing, we kind of saw that they had this problem where they would see this data, and then they would kind of say to themselves, now what? Like, what do I do? And so our first task was to get the right data in front of them, but then our next task was to make that data actionable. And if any of you have ever worked on like an analytics tool or any tool with data in it, the real struggle, one of the real design problems is to make that data actionable. Like what are people going to use it for? And that was definitely the case with this screen. People were asking, okay, like my leads are down or my traffic is down, what do I do? And so we thought this was a really good place to introduce some microcopy to see how we could kind of change the user experience here. And so when people were doing good or when their leads were improving, we wrote copy that said, wowza, keep doing what you're doing because it's working. And that we just kind of tried that out. We have a copywriter. We came up with a whole bunch of different versions of this. But people really love this one because it said, keep doing what you're doing, right? Our software had never told people that when you're successful and things are going well, just keep doing what you're doing. So we weren't telling them to change their behavior. We were telling them to stay the course. And I can't tell you how many people appreciated that message because when you have so much data about what you're doing, you have analytics. We have more analytics than anybody can really use. It's nice to know when that analytics package actually tells you, okay, here's your next step. And in this case, like you don't have to do anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. Here's another example. When things weren't going so well, so like when those graphs were getting low and leads and traffic weren't going up, we'd say, uh-oh, conversion's starting to slide. Time to shake things up a bit and do some other task to get your visits and leads back up. And so we were correcting, we kind of course correcting people whose marketing wasn't particularly working at that point, and saying, you should try these other things. So here's what we learned from that dashboard case study. We found that overexposure and repetitiveness breaks the magic. So that's why we had a whole bunch of different messages. So if we showed the same message every time, like keep doing what you're doing, if we showed that every time, it really gets old quickly for people who are coming to the application every day. So you really need to break it up, have several messages in the same way that Mailchimp had a bunch of different messages just saying hello. So vary your messages like that. Another thing we learned is that tone is extremely important, especially when something is going wrong. Your microcopy needs to be, I call it appropriately serious. If you make light of something, and it shouldn't be made light of. So for example, if we kind of made a joke that your leads were down or your traffic is down, that's actually someone's job, right? Like you're messing with someone's job. They're trying to report to their manager that they're doing a good job. So we learned very quickly not to make light of someone's traffic going down, or not to make light that their marketing wasn't that effective. And so being appropriately serious is very important. Once you use Microcopy to fix some issue, you'll discover new issues like the next day. So people will get over that initial hurdle and then find a lot more hurdles. So it's actually an interesting, it's kind of an interesting way to keep discovering new things. And people really do notice Microcopy. Here are some couple quotes from people. So I just noticed the wowzer cheerleading comments, so they called them cheerleading comments. That was my thought exactly. And I'm flattered that you noticed, right? So like they're personifying the software here. That was actually a really good day. I was happy to see that. It's a cute touch and made my day, right? So people really do notice this stuff. Here's another one. I feel like I have a mini digital coach in my dashboard, right? So another example of people personifying the software. That's really powerful when people start talking about your software as a person. So I'm really passionate about copywriting. I've been doing UI design for about 15 years now, designing for the web. And the more I do it, the more I focus on copy. And I just keep kind of doubling down on copywriting. Ginny Reddish talked about the importance of copy yesterday or the day before. I think that copy is really the easiest way to improve your interface, the fastest way to improve your interface, the most effective way to make your interface friendly, the most effective way to really kind of get that human touch into your interface. So I want to leave you with two thoughts that I feel really, really strongly about. The first one is this, that if you don't think copy is the most important part of an interface, just try to take it out. Just try to remove it and see if anyone can use anything. They won't be able to, right? So like, and kind of a corollary to that is that I've worked with a lot of designers and hired designers, worked on big projects with designers. And the ones who I think are the best designers are the ones who sweat copy and the ones who you can have a conversation about like button text for 20 minutes, right? Feels kind of silly when you're talking about details like that. But the end result is that the design is always better and it's always stronger because you're paying attention to those tiny details. So my second thought is this, that if your UI designer doesn't sweat every single word they add to a screen, then you should probably fire them because they're not that great. I think copy is that important. So that is, that's my final thought for you. Thank you.